Knocked down, sitting in a corner and staring at his enemy with wide eyes, the young warrior shook with fear. He was convinced that he was confronted not by an ordinary man, but by a monster. An experienced warrior with an ugly scar instead of his left eye urged the young fighter to get up and keep fighting. The rest of the warriors put their weapons, some with swords and some with spears, forward against the enemy. All of them were afraid of the one they started this fight with. Were they looking forward to the sect masters coming to their aid? One of the warriors told a comrade that he had heard that their enemy had been poisoned beforehand to weaken him, but apparently he was an even bigger monster than they had imagined. More than a dozen armed men surrounded one tall master, of mighty build with long red hair and wearing black and red armor. He held one of the warriors by the neck. The poor fellow, bent over on his knees, gasped and tried to loosen the master's dead grip, but it was to no avail. The master yanked the poor man's neck sharply, and a terrible sound of broken bones in his spine hung in the air. The experienced warrior tried to cheer up his comrades, despite the horror they were witnessing. He told his comrades that their enemy was a simple man, which meant that, eventually, he would run out of steam. The experienced warrior urged his comrades not to be afraid and to attack. Pointing the blades of their weapons at the enemy, the warriors rushed into battle. A fierce fight ensued. The enemy was strong and fast. He broke the bones of the young warriors with his bare hands. The ground was flooded with blood. But the one-eyed warrior continued to chase his comrades into this terrible slaughter against the Red Demon. The mortals didn't stand a chance. The enemy tore their frail bodies apart with his bare hands. Their enemy was a Red Demon. It was foolish to think that such an idiotic plan as waiting out his fatigue would work at all. These warriors were told that a battle with him would seem like an easy walk. But none of them could have guessed that things would be very different. There were no enemies left around the Red Demon who could offer him any resistance. All of them were defeated. Suddenly, the silhouettes of the sect's masters appeared on the peaks of the high mountains that towered before the Red Demon. They saw that their enemy was not going to give up so easily. Now they too were to join the battle against evil. A young boy from among the masters went to the edge of the cliff and shouted to the Red Demon that his reign would end that day. The Red Demon Master discerned a blue demon in the distance. The blue wizards rushed into battle with the Red Demon. There were many of them, each trying to strike, but the enemy each time managed to dodge. The battle dragged on, and already the blades of the Blue Masters lacked only millimeters to inflict damage on the opponent. The Red Demon Master could no longer take that risk. He applied his power, the heavenly demonic art of destruction. A bright red blast wave scattered his enemies aside. The survivors of the strong demonic attack of the Blue Masters, bleeding, gradually rose to their feet. And yet the Red Demon's body managed to pierce the enemy's blades. From his chest protruded the spear of the black flame of a ghostly demon, one of the 9 demons. The sword of the great wisdom of a disciple of Tai Chi, one of the 10 great sects, was thrust into his thigh. A sword of cold steel was thrust into his back by the master of the Mangan clan, one of the 5 noble clans. The Imperial Special Forces captain's silver moon fang protruded from his leg. The blades of the heroes who rule this world pierced the body of one man, the Red Demon Master. 5 years after joining the martial arts community, his name was known around the world. By the 7th year, his very existence was already a threat to the world. And in the 8th year, he joined the demon cult. And for the first time in the history of the celestial demon cult, an outsider became the leader of that cult. His name has become a myth and a legend. The Red Demon, whose body was pierced with many cold weapons, noticed that he had been hit with quite a number of blades. The Blue Master said that he always thought he knew perfectly well how powerful his opponent was. But he added, this situation was proving him wrong. He noted the overwhelming power of the Red Demon, and that he was very powerful. That's why the Blue Masters hoped he would be the last of such powerful demons. The Red Master asked the Blue One if that was the reason for their betrayal. The Blue Master replied that it was all the fault of the Red Demon. because he tried to teach his martial art to ordinary followers. These actions are a direct disregard for all the origins of the celestial demon cult. The Blue Master told his opponent that they couldn't let him get away with it. The Red Demon turned to the other Blue Sect Master, the monk, and asked him if he agreed with the Blue Master. The monk bowed to the Red Master, addressed him by his name, Amitabha, and replied that his actions were indeed appeals to non-obedience. As a Buddhist, he could not blame the man for refusing to possess. The monk also added that the master had no idea how many mean people there could be in the world. And if the martial art of the Red Master becomes generally available, followers of evil will be able to gain power without cultivation. This is why the monk could not ignore the chaos that would probably result from the actions of the Red Master. The Red Master replied to the monk that he had heard a very nice reason from him, but in the end, in his opinion, they were all petty excuses, needed only to bury the tiny fraction of power they all had. The Blue Master replied that the reason was irrelevant in this case. The Red Master was a man he could not understand. The Blue Master added that the Red Demon caused his own death. The Blue Master said he thought that even a red demon should be afraid of death. The demon grinned, drew his sword, and then grabbed the Blue Master sharply by the throat. The Red Demon stated that there was no need to fear death. He added that what they should have been afraid of was what was coming after her. The other masters of the Blue Sect cried out, asking the Red Master not to commit more sins. The Red Demon looked the Blue Master in the eye and stated that he knew what was keeping him here. The Red Demon held the Blue Master by the throat with one hand, and with the other pulled from his chest a blade that was called Blue Eyes. It was a gift the Red Master made to the Blue Master. Pulling the bloody blade from his chest, the Red Demon said he had to give it back to the Blue Master. Continuing to hold him by the throat, the Red Demon plunged his blade into the Blue Master's stomach. The guy shouted. Looking directly into the eyes of his victim, the Red Demon said that the Blue Master must know what it meant to betray him. Then he took the blade out of his victim's body and added that he never forgot a grudge. Tears rolled from the Blue Master's eyes. The Red Demon placed the victim's body on the ground, then stood up, looked at his palm, which was stained with the Blue Wizard's blood, and felt an incomparable feeling. It seemed to him that this was the end. The Red Demon remembered the drink in the red iron can, but could not remember its name. He missed that drink. He thought he had forgotten about it, but his death made him remember those times. If he gets another chance, he'd like to have a simple, normal life like everyone else. The Red Master's eyes darkened. He decided he was dying. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice was heard in the darkness. He seemed to hear something before he died, but what was that tickling feeling? He opened his eyes and saw that he was in a hospital room, lying on a bunk. There was a girl, a nurse, standing in front of him. She asked him if he was awake. He tried to get out of bed and asked the girl where he was. The nurse advised him not to get out of bed. Then she saw that the bandages that had been used to bandage the patient's chest were covered with scarlet blood stains. She told the guy that his wounds had opened up. The nurse asked the patient not to move and left after the doctor. The guy looked around, saw the IV stand next to him, and was finally convinced that he was in the hospital. He turned around and saw the window, and in the window was a big city. The guy was glad to be back. A few days later, a doctor and a man and a woman came to the main character's room. The doctor looked at the guy with surprise. Noticing this look, the woman with the short red hair asked the doctor what was wrong with Jinho. The doctor replied that nothing bad happened to him. But he noted that it was amazing to him how quickly the patient's lacerations healed, even though he had only been in the hospital for a few days. What he meant was that even once they reopened. Jinho reflected that perhaps it would have been easier with key meditation. He had to be more careful from now on. The woman asked the doctor if this meant that Jinho would soon be able to leave the hospital. The doctor noted that the patient was in good condition, but there was no reason to rush. He added that curing the internal injury was an important factor. The man and the woman exhaled in sync with a sigh of relief. They told Jinho that mom and dad had to get back to work, but they promised to be back by evening. They left him some money to spend on his own needs. Jin-ho thanked his mother. The woman resented the fact that Jin-ho called her mother again. The doctor noticed that Jin-ho had a slight problem with his memory. The woman asked Jin-ho to call her mom. After that, they said goodbye to him and left the room. The boy understood that he still needed time to get used to the sensations of this world. He had been in Zhongyuan for 20 years. It was only logical that he felt uncomfortable here. This was his third life. He is no longer the Red Demon Master, but Gang Jin-ho. Before becoming a Red Demon Master in Zhongyuan, he lived the life of Gang Jin-ho in the modern world. His first life as Gang Jin-ho was miserable. Because of the accident, he lost his family and his legs. And after 15 years as a lame man, he ended his life at the age of 35. And suddenly, he began life in Zhongyuan. His second life was far from easy, but he was able to live a magnificent life as a Red Demon Master. In any case, this life wasn't long either. So why was he back in the modern world again, as if his life had been rewound? What's more, it rewound the way the incident happened. When Gang Jin-ho was only 18 years old, he looked at his left hand. It was calm. Both of his lives did not last longer than 40 years. Even if he were to combine his two lives, it was still a few dozen less than a lifetime. He couldn't say they were good lives. But he wanted to do things differently this time. Now he had the memories of Gang Jin-ho and the experience of the Red Demon Master from Zhongyuan. In this life, he wanted to do everything he could to make his present life turn out normal, just like everyone else's. At first in Zhongyuan, there was one thing that bothered him the most. Over time, he forgot its name, but apparently that's before his eyes made him remember everything. It was called Coke. Gang stood at the soda machine and stared at the red tin can of the drink. He decided it was time for him to use the money he was given. He remembered how to use them and slipped the bill into the machine. Then he pressed the button on the drink he chose, but suddenly the machine spit his money back out. Gang wanted to take the bill, but it fell out of the machine onto the floor. He didn't understand why the machine refused to accept his 10,001 bill. Suddenly there was a kid who told Gang that it should have been noticeable after a few tries. And then the guy called Gang an alien. Later, the two of them walked around the hospital grounds, sat down on a wooden bench, and took in Coke. The boy noticed the heavy stare Gang was giving the can of Coke. Then he asked why he was staring at the tin can like that. Gang replied that he owed him a favor and was going to pay him back. The kid replied that it was just a can of drink. Gang looked at the kid, who had already finished the contents of his can, and opened his own. Finally, he was ready for a Coke. Going back to Zhongyuan, he put so much effort into replicating that taste. None of them were successful, though. Gang Jin-ho brought the can to his lips and drank some Coke. It was that fizzy taste bursting inside like fireworks. From the vivid emotion, Jin-ho even squeezed his eyes shut. Seeing how Gang Jin-ho reacted to Coke, the kid laughed himself to tears. He said that Ganges drank Coke like it was his first time. Gang Jin-ho replied that it had been a long time since he had drunk it. Wiping the tears from his face, the kid said it was fun, and then asked why his companion ended up in the hospital. Jin-ho said that he was told that there had been a car accident. And then he caught himself thinking that the person he was talking to was not a guy at all, but a girl. Gang replied that he didn't look sick and asked if he was faking it just so he could miss school. Jin-ho replied that this was not his goal and also asked why his companion was in the hospital. The girl said she had been told she had had a weak heart from birth. It was fine now, but sometimes it hurt terribly. Jin-ho asked her if her heart hurt so much that it was impossible to go to school. The girl replied that she didn't care about school. Everyone bullied her at school anyway. They told her that surgery wouldn't help because her heart was very small or something. She admitted that she just felt sorry for her parents. It seemed to her that she would never leave this hospital for the rest of her life. Gang noticed that his companion looked older than her age. It must have been because she had gone through so much hardship at such an early age. Suddenly, Jinho's scanning eye ability kicked in, and he saw that the girl had meridian stagnation, and the non-circulating ki was overloading and injuring her body. However, they could have been corrected. She only needed to break through the stagnant meridians with a powerful force. It must have been difficult. Suddenly, someone called a girl named Jae-yun. It was her mother. She waved to her daughter and called out to her. The girl jumped off the bench and, after saying goodbye to Gang Jinho, ran into the arms of her mother. But suddenly, he asked the girl, while she was still not far away from him, what would she do if she got better? The girl answered that she just wanted to live like everyone else, going to school, playing, and things like that. Jinho smiled back at her, and the girl immediately ran to her mother. Jinho decided that he would repay her. He threw the empty can into a trash can and returned to the hospital. After thinking for a while, Gang Jinho decided that he too should go to school. But what grade was he in when he was already 18? Suddenly, a guy in a hooded sweatshirt over his head walked past Jinho with a bloody leg where a wound could be seen. This guy's eyes seemed dangerous to Gang. This guy was immediately given medical attention, and afterwards he told the doctor that the incident happened to him at a construction site nearby. The doctor noted that the guy was lucky he didn't injure a bone, and then asked him if working on the construction site was too hard for the guy. The guy replied that he loved the job, and it would have been better if he hadn't made that mistake. The doctor replied that he was glad to see the patient in good spirits, said he would leave him, and, drawing the curtains behind him, left to see other patients. The guy stopped putting on a fake smile as soon as the doctor left him. His eyes immediately fell on the medical table, where there were bandages and scalpels. The doctor, meanwhile, was talking to a nurse. He asked her if she thought there were too many patients in the emergency room. Then the doctor exhaled and added that this work was becoming tiresome for him. Perhaps he had to meet someone again. The doctor asked the nurse if she knew anyone he could meet. The nurse replied that she didn't have any of those on her list. Suddenly, 3 men came through the door of the hospital. The doctor shifted his suspicious gaze to them. One of the guys showed his ID and told the doctor that he was Detective Lee Jong-in of the Eastern Police Department. He wanted to ask the doctor some questions. The doctor didn't mind. The detective explained that they had arrived about a fleeing suspect nearby. The detective explained that they searched for the suspect at nearby hospitals based on the fact that he had been shot in the leg. Then Lee Jong-in asked the doctor if he had any urgent patients that came to mind. The doctor replied that he might have had such a patient, but there was no one else in the room where he had left the patient with the wound on his leg. Jae-yun was sitting in the hallway on the couch, bored. Her mother was gone. She had done all her business, and she wanted to play with someone. Then she remembered the guy with the coke. Suddenly, a guy with a bandaged leg appeared in the hallway. The girl turned her head and saw a guy walk up to her with a bandaged leg. He looked at her angrily and said hello, and after that, he stuck his hand in his sweatshirt pocket. Jae-yun was frightened. What happens is no one's fault. Detectives realized that the fleeing suspect was in the hospital and had already run after him. They ran into him in the hallway. He was standing next to the couch, grabbing Jae-yun and holding a surgical scalpel to her throat. The suspect took her hostage. The perpetrator told the girl that he was an unlucky man who just tripped over her, a more unlucky child. Jinho was lying in his room watching a television program. On the program, a man with black glasses was praising and eating ramen. Watching television, Jinho realized one thing while he was in the hospital this time, that television is a really outstanding thing. Compared to Zhongyuan, where entertainment was limited to perhaps a few operas and rowing, TV had countless channels, each full of information and entertainment. He still needed time to understand modern humor, though. It was also a great way to get a lot of information quickly. Then the program was interrupted for an urgent news bulletin. The anchor in the channel's studio spoke of the serial murder suspect fleeing after being shot by a police officer. Reports said the suspect had been shot by police and was now on the run, but his exact location had not yet been determined. The news about the serial